Charles Duhigg explores the truth about habits in The Power of Habit. Through powerful storytelling and compelling research, Duhigg uncovers how habits work, how they're formed, and most importantly, how we can change them. The book begins with a simple but profound idea. Habits are at the core of everything we do, yet they are invisible forces, shaping our lives without us even knowing. Chapter 1. The Habit Loop. How habits work. What happens when you wake up in the morning? Do you follow the same routine without even thinking about it? What do you do first? Check your phone, brush your teeth, grab a coffee. Each of these actions happens as part of an unconscious process. This is where the habit loop begins. The habit loop is a three-step neurological pattern that governs how habits work. It consists of three key elements: the cue, the routine, and the reward. Cue or trigger. The cue is a signal that triggers your brain to begin the automatic behavior. Could be anything: waking up, a specific time of day, an emotional state, or even a particular location. Routine. This is the behavior that follows the cue. It can be anything from brushing your teeth to smoking a cigarette to running a mile. Reward. After completing the routine, the brain receives a reward, which reinforces the habit loop and makes the behavior more likely to happen again. This is where the feeling of satisfaction, pleasure, or relief comes from. For example, imagine the simple act of brushing your teeth. The cue could be waking up or seeing your toothbrush. The routine is brushing your teeth, and the reward is the fresh, clean feeling afterward. Over time, your brain starts associating waking up with the reward of freshness, making brushing your teeth an automatic action. Duhigg illustrates this concept through the story of Eugene Pauly, a man whose brain was severely damaged by encephalitis. Despite losing much of his memory, Eugene retained the ability to form and follow habits. His case demonstrated that the basal ganglia, an ancient part of the brain, is critical in forming habits. Even when higher brain functions were damaged, his habit loops remained intact. This insight that habits are governed by the basal ganglia set the stage for understanding how habits can be rewired and changed, even when conscious memory fails. Chapter 2. The Craving Brain. How to Create New Habits. One of the most powerful concepts in The Power of Habit is the idea that the brain does not just seek rewards, it craves them. The craving is what drives the habit loop. In fact, the craving for the reward is what keeps the loop running. To better understand this, consider the example of the Pepsodent campaign in the early 20th century. A marketing executive, Claude Hopkins, transformed toothpaste from a luxury to an everyday necessity by tapping into people's cravings for the feeling of cleanliness. He changed the way people thought about brushing their teeth by focusing on the tingling sensation as a sign of freshness, which created a craving for that sensation. Habits aren't just about mindlessly performing routines. They are driven by cravings. This craving element makes habits harder to change. But it also gives us the power to create new habits by manipulating the cues, routines, and rewards in our lives. To change a habit, you don't have to eliminate the routine. Instead, you need to replace it with a new one that satisfies the same craving. This is the key to successful habit transformation. For example, if you're trying to break the habit of eating junk food in the afternoon, it's not enough to simply tell yourself to stop. You need to find a new behavior, like eating a healthier snack, that gives you a similar reward, whether it's a feeling of comfort or a quick energy boost. Chapter 3. The Golden Rule of Habit Change. Why transformation occurs. Changing a habit is not easy, but it is possible if you follow the golden rule of habit change. You cannot extinguish a bad habit, you can only change it. The key to successfully changing a habit is not to simply get rid of the routine, but to replace it with a new one that still satisfies the original craving. This is the key difference between just trying to quit something and actually replacing it with something better. A great example of this principle comes from the story of Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. AA's method of transforming drinking habits hinges on replacing the addiction with a new routine, community support. By focusing on creating new habits through fellowship, confession, and personal growth, AA has been successful in helping people combat alcoholism. The emotional support system and structure of accountability replace the craving for alcohol with the craving for a positive social connection and a sense of belonging. Duhigg further explains how this process works with the example of a man named Tony, who struggled with procrastination. Tony realized that his procrastination was driven by a craving for relief from stress. By replacing the routine of procrastinating with the routine of focusing on a small task, Tony found that he could still satisfy his craving for relief, but in a more productive way. The key takeaway: if you want to change a habit, you have to identify the craving driving the behavior and find a new routine that satisfies that craving. Chapter 4: Keystone Habits, The Ballad of Paul O'Neill. In this chapter, Duhigg introduces the concept of keystone habits, small changes or habits that have a ripple effect on other behaviors. Keystone habits are foundational, meaning that by changing one habit, other habits and behaviors can also change. The story of Paul O'Neill, the CEO of Alcoa, is a prime example of how keystone habits work. O'Neill transformed Alcoa, a struggling aluminum company, by focusing on a single habit: safety. By making safety the company's top priority, he not only reduced workplace accidents but also fostered a culture of discipline, trust, and collaboration. This one keystone habit led to better overall performance, higher morale, and a stronger bottom line. What's powerful about keystone habits is that they can have unexpected positive effects. For example, people who start exercising often find themselves eating healthier, getting more sleep, and feeling more productive. Exercise isn't just a physical activity. It triggers a cascade of other positive behaviors. That's the magic of keystone habits. Understanding keystone habits allows us to leverage small changes in our lives to create significant transformations in multiple areas. Instead of trying to change everything at once, focus on the habits that matter most and watch how they ripple into other areas. Chapter 5: Starbucks and the Habit of Success. Starbucks is a company that has built its success around understanding the power of habits, particularly the role of willpower and how to make it automatic. Starbucks' approach is a textbook example of how organizations can change behaviors and build powerful habits. Starbucks trains its employees not just to serve coffee, but to develop the habit of responding to stress with calm, positive actions. The company's training program, called The Habit of Success, helps employees internalize the behaviors needed to succeed in high-pressure situations. This training creates a culture of self-discipline, where willpower becomes automatic and part of the company's DNA. Duhigg also explores how organizations like Starbucks focus on creating an environment that helps employees build positive habits. By instilling these habits, employees become more effective, more engaged, and better equipped to handle stress without resorting to negative behaviors. Starbucks' success story shows that habits, whether personal or organizational, can be nurtured and shaped deliberately. With the right training, you can foster the right behaviors in yourself and in those around you. Chapter 6: The Power of a Crisis, How Leaders Create Habits Through Accident and Design. Crisis moments can be powerful agents of change. Duhigg explores how some of the most successful companies have used crises to reshape habits. The story of how Paul O'Neill turned around Alcoa by focusing on safety also illustrates the role of crises in driving change. In times of crisis, people are often more willing to embrace change because the status quo is no longer sustainable. Leaders who understand the power of habit can use crises to trigger a transformation in organizational habits. For example, when a company faces a major setback or failure, it may be forced to revisit its habits and values, leading to a breakthrough. This principle also applies to personal habits. Duhigg shares the story of Lisa, a woman who used a personal crisis, her divorce, as a catalyst for changing her own destructive habits. By focusing on one small change, quitting smoking, she transformed her entire life. Lisa's story shows that even in moments of personal crisis, there is an opportunity to change habits and reshape your future. Chapter 7: How Target Knows What You Want Before You Do. In this chapter, Duhigg delves into how companies use the science of habit to predict consumer behavior. Companies like Target are able to predict what you'll buy before you even know you need it, based on the data they collect from your habits. Target, for instance, tracks consumer purchasing habits to predict life events, such as pregnancy. By identifying the buying patterns of customers, Target can send targeted ads to pregnant women before they even know they're expecting, using their buying patterns as a signal. This level of insight into consumer behavior is a testament to how habits shape not only our personal lives but also our interactions with businesses. Understanding the science behind habits gives companies and marketers the ability to influence decisions and behaviors at a massive scale. This chapter serves as a cautionary tale of how our habits can be influenced by unseen forces. Conclusion: the neurology of free will. Are we responsible for our habits? The final section of the book tackles a philosophical question. How much control do we have over our habits? Are we slaves to them, or do we have the power to change? While habits are powerful and often automatic, Duhigg argues that understanding how they work gives us the power to change them. By learning the science behind habits and how they're formed, we can become more conscious of the cues, routines, and rewards that shape our lives. Ultimately, the power of habit suggests that while we may not be able to eliminate all of our habits, we can reshape them. We can reprogram our habits to serve our goals and desires. By taking control of our habits, we take control of our lives.